Hi, Pia.
Hi, Layne. How's it going?
Good morning, good evening for
Good
you.
morning, good evening to
Buonasera.
you too.
Buonanotte. It's actually almost buonanotte there, isn't it?
It is. It is close to that.
I wish I
So
had a
I know
glass
that
of
today
wine.
you want to talk about Lazio wines.
I do. I think that, it's such because not a lot of people know much about Lazio. And so you live there. I've written about it and I did live there for what it's worth. And I just think that this could be something that would be really valuable for people, valuable information on places to go that are kind of already vetted, you know?
Okay. I think that sounds
So
like an excellent idea.
the thing that people also, well, I mean, people probably do know this, but it's interesting that Lazio is north and south of Rome. And I mean, east and west too, to some extent, but mainly north and south. I think you can divide it that way. And what would you say are the main differences between like the northern and the southern areas of Lazio from a wine perspective?
So I think that the northern region is one that's more closely associated to white wines.
Mhm.
So in the north, you'll find sort of great varieties like Bellone, like Malvasia and Trebbiano, and it's just an area that lends itself a lot to good wine, white wine, around Frascati as well, around Rome, to really good sort of white wine making conditions. Whereas south of Rome, I would associate much more with your red or black grapes. So your Cesanese del Piglio or your Nero Buono from Codi.
Mhm.
It's the climate tends to lend itself better. So Lazio in general has excellent climate, and in fact, it's the great paradox of Lazio, right? I mean, you should have outstanding wines here, and though you do, there are some good wines. There's also a lot of mediocre wine, and there's everything from sort of volcanic soils to I mean, perfect climate. You've got this Mediterranean climate with sort of maritime influences. So you've got this excellent breezes that sort of really keep your vineyards free of any diseases or anything like that. You've got plenty of hours of sunshine, which is great, as you know, for growth of your vines. And then for Cesanese particularly, it's a grape that needs a lot of time to ripen. The long sunlight, the long hours of sunlight is really perfect for it, and it grows really, really, really well. Whereas Frascati, for example, in more associated to the northern part, you've got this nice kind of elevation, which allows for excellent crisp whites. That's not to say that also by the sea, sort of towards Nettuno or south, Cardi, those areas, you also get very good Bellone, which again is associated with kind of excellent climatic conditions and even sort of sandy conditions of soil if you go more towards kind of the Nettuno area. So I mean, all in all, just yeah,
So
you should only have outstanding wines here, and yet, as you know, there's a lot of mediocrity.
yeah, it's a lot of timing in a way. I feel like, as time goes on, you learn more about the importance of these things, like the terroir. I mean, it's always been important, but things like volcanic soils, I feel like that wasn't necessarily such a big deal, like 20 years ago. And now we understand like the fact that those soils that remain are so great for winemaking. That's kind of part of reason probably that Lazio is kind of getting more acknowledgement now. But um, I just am curious because I understand what you're saying that Southern Lazio has red wines that are, at least has them that are kind of the key grapes, but also has a lot of whites as well. Why would you think that the northern, I mean, they're not that far apart. Is the northern section more white focused than the southern?
I mean, I think it's a question of there's historical reasons as much as there's also, I think, consumption reasons, right? So, places around, for example, I'm thinking Montefiascone, all of those areas, they've traditionally had your Trebbiano, your Malvasia, and also international grapes, and that's not to say that they don't make reds. They're just much more known. I mean, SSS is a very famous white grape, white wine that comes from there, which is, I think it's Trebbiano, Malvasia, and I want to say Trebbiano, Malvasia. There's something else in there, but I can't remember. But I mean, they're just very much associated with more of your white wines, even sparklings, And again, I wouldn't be able to tell you a red autochthonous, so indigenous grape,
Yes.
you commonly find north of Rome. You get lots of excellent reds, but all the most famous vineyards, I feel like in the north of Rome, tend to do more international grapes. So they'll do your Syrah, they'll do your Cabernet Sauvignon, even, all of those, and they do them incredibly successfully, by the way.
Yeah.
But it's not if you want an accurate representation of Rome and of the Lazio region in terms of its grapes, it's not that.
Yeah, that's what I think is interesting too. I think that I mean, for example, like Castelli Romani and Frascati, to you, do you see those as being north? I feel like they're south.
So it kind of depends on where you're looking, right?
Yeah.
So Castelli Romani is slightly south of Rome. It's true, it's slightly south of Rome, but then you've got like the whole area underneath, which would be, everything from Cori down to the kind of area called, sorry, I'm drawing blank.
Latina?
That's south of Latina. So,
Okay.
the kind of Latina to a certain extent, where you get all the Cantina Sant'Andrea, all of that kind of stuff down there. That's what I would consider really southern Lazio, right? You can even get Greco down there, I mean, it's close to Campania.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's true. Yeah, you can definitely get Greco. Interesting. Yeah. So just because for me, I put Frascati and Castelli Romani in the southern grouping for me in my mind. And maybe it's just because of the trip that I took. I saw all of that together. And so that's why I see it that way. But that being said, like, the North so much better than I do. What are your favorites, places to visit? And I guess I'll take it maybe looking at not just the wine, but also from an experience standpoint of visiting a place that, you can go and you've got a good experience.
So in the north, I think I'm trying to think of somewhere around kind of Montefiascone, where I think, again, you can get, I'm trying to remember, the name of a cantina that I know there that I think is really good. And it kind of is very representative of the kind of Trebbiano, Toscano, Malvasia, made in a very kind of authentic way. But for whatever reason,
While you're looking at that, I'm going to just jump in and while
yeah,
you're looking for that, I feel like for me, right outside of Rome, two really good ones that I love and are Giacobini and Omina Romana. And we talked about that a little bit. Omina Romana is it's actually, it's the funny thing is when we talk about this stuff, a lot of it isn't exported. I mean, to the States, like within Europe, yes. But and Omina Romana is, and they've won Tre Bicchieri before. I mean, it's actually probably one of the more newer, but more established in the sense of being known. And but they're doing international grapes. They're doing some indigenous grapes. It's actually a family that it's the mother is Italian, the father is German, and the daughter they grew up in Germany, and then the father found this land in Lazio and he had it soil tested. And he's just kind of an investor, and he had it at soil tested, and it came out to be, this would be make amazing wine. This is the exact wine you would want. So they purchased this and built it from the ground up, like built everything from the ground up. And it's the wines are beautiful. That is for sure. It's a nice place to visit. I mean, it's it doesn't have the history that a lot of places might have in Lazio. You know, usually you're getting a lot of like family history with each location, but
Yeah.
because they, you know, purchased this and then they built the grapes, but the wines are incredible. Jacobini is the pretty much exact opposite. This the Jacobini family, it's a noble family, and they trace back, I don't know, at least centuries of winemaking, and they were really, really successful up until World War II, with their label, and it was a Jacobini label, and they, you know, distributed around Italy and all of that, and maybe Europe. And then after World War II, as what happened to Lazio, is a lot of vineyards, a lot of, you know, a lot of things were destroyed, and
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. Absolutely.
and that's what happened to them. And so they, and then joined a co-op consortium, co-op, and were just kind of selling their grapes for a long time. And just in the last 10, 20 years, the new generation, and they're like 40, the count and countess, have rejuvenated the label, the brand, and they have gotten really focused on, they only make one wine per vintage. And that wine is amazing. It's a white Trebbiano, I believe.
Nice.
Yeah. And but what's as good, I'll say, is the experience of going there, because they've got this ancient palazzo in Castelli Romani in Genzano di Roma.
Yeah, Genzano.
Which used to be a real place that, you know, a lot of, it was kind of like a summer home place for like wealthy Romans, as far as I know. A lot of
Yeah.
this Castelli Romani are, but it's incredible. It's just like they still live there, so the area that you see is kind of like set off, but it's got like, they had cardinals in the family. They've got portraits of cardinals. The furnishings inside are incredible, and they put you in a room with like these busts, like of the heads of the of the people, and they're just wonderful too. And also because for non-Italian speaking people, she's American, so it's like very understandable. You know, you don't have any, you know what I mean, language issues. You don't usually anyway, but so I mean, I just think that it was a great experience. They're wonderful. They don't have, that's their tasting room, and they don't have a winery per se. And so they are basically like growing their grapes, and it's like something you can't really even visit. So it's really different. You know, you're not seeing the wine production. You are seeing, you know, the tasting room essentially, and hearing about the history. But those two are really great, and right outside of Rome. And then, did you have that one that you remembered? Did you want to?
No, there was one I was actually thinking of, was it's more around Cori. So there are two actually. One was uh, Marco Carpinetti, and the other one is Cantina Sant'Andrea.
Ah,
And I
okay.
think the reason is for two very different reasons. I think Marco Carpinetti is one of the best places to go, south of Rome. I mean, as you know, Marco Carpinetti is someone who is known now as a kind of, you know, guru of
Yeah.
wines in the
Yeah.
Lazio region. He has had unbelievable success. He's one of the only wineries that had started biological organic farming way back even in the 70s. And he does biodynamic as well, only for parts of his wine, but he does that too. And he is one of the forefathers of really trying to rediscover indigenous grapes. So he works really with Nerubbano, with Bellone, but lots of other grapes as well, and using alternative methods. So using big amphoras, you know, in some of his wine production. So Nzu, for example, is one of those, which he ages in the amphoras and has, you know, and serves in this amazing clay little sort of
Oh my gosh.
serving. Yeah, it's really incredible. This
Wow.
kind of serving, like it's like a small kettle. It's really beautiful. And you know, as you know, Cardi is this beautiful hilltop town, and it's such a nice kind of way to spend a day outside Rome. Unfortunately, obviously, you need a car to get there.
You have
But
to.
the people who work there, I mean, he works there together with his daughter and his son. And his daughter, for example, speaks immaculate English. So it's a really and has kind of really invested in the business in expanding it to allow anyone coming to the winery itself to then discover the region via horseback or, you know, in different kind of trails and hikes, and then to finish up at the end of the day with a wine tasting with, you know, some of the most spectacular food. It's also a place where you have amazing
Wow.
cheeses and
I want to go to
wines.
Marco Carpenetti. I've never
It
been
is,
there.
it's honestly one of the nicest days out I've had in a really long time.
God.
And he
We should do
rediscovered it, you know,
Lazio.
from from his grandfather. So the three stars that you see on the Marco Capinetti bottle, he rediscovered in a shed, you know, that he found that his grandfather had, and he kind of redid the brand. It's really incredible.
That is incredible. And, you know, not to go off tangent here, but that is something to think about. We could go and spend like one day in northern Lazio and one day in southern and go to like Carpenetti, Cori, and see some other things. I mean, since we're Roma to Sonoma, it would be good content. But anyway,
Yeah.
that's just, I can edit that out. But
No, really, it's definitely worth it. It's one of the best cantine
but
in
I
the
know you want to
Lazio.
go to Sicily. I mean, I have to go there eventually anyway. So I understand you can do that any day. That's not exciting for you. But maybe next time when I come and I've got more time and I'm in the area more, we can do that as a day trip or
That would
something.
be wonderful.
Yeah.
That would be wonderful.
Um, yeah, and Corey, I think with Cincinnato is another one that's
Yeah.
there. Yeah, and Carbonetti used to be a part of Cincinnato in a sense because it's a co-op. And they were like his going back to his father, and I don't know if it's farther than that. They were growing grapes for the cooperative, and that's kind of how they got into this indigenous. Well, I don't want to say that's how they got into it. That's kind of the core of this indigenous variety kind of enclave of Quarry, where they were able to save these grapes for so long that, you know, so many of these kind of obscure indigenous grapes were just lost to
Well,
time.
they were used for blending, right? In
Yeah.
so many cases, they were just
And there
used for
was
blending.
and there was no market for a period of time, you know, it was all international. So people pulled out their old indigenous grapes that nobody wanted, those vines, and they planted international varieties because that's kind of what they were told to do. In fact, when I interviewed oh God, it's a great quote. I might be able to pull it up, but the one of the children that owned Colecichi, which makes Cesanese, she had such a great quote. She said, you know, in the 80s, they told us, you know, we are in the 70s, they told us nobody wants your indigenous grapes. You have to pull everything out and plant it international. That's all anybody wants. And then in the 80s, they said it's cab. Everyone wants cab. And then they told us everyone wants the big, you know, full bodied, you know, kind of. She said, we're done with that. We know what we're doing and we're listening to ourselves now. And it kind of describes it pretty well, you know, the kind of the flow of the wine world in Lazio, but also lots of places. I think that, you know, this is probably also a kind of a trend that we're going through right now with the indigenous. I mean, it is something that real wine people are really looking for things that other people don't know about. Always.
Yeah,
You know?
I agree. I agree. And it's actually, I think this is quite a good segue to Casale del Giglio, who I know that you've written about a lot. And the reason is because, you know, Casale del Giglio gets a lot of flack actually for the fact that they have planted so many international grapes, and and it's actually only very recently that they've kind of, you know, got on the bandwagon with one or two of their labels to try and do more indigenous grapes because they see that the market is going that way. But
Yeah.
otherwise, you know, Casale del Giglio is known for its Syrah. It's known for its, you know, they do a Petit Verdot, they do a Tempranillo, you know, I mean,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
yeah, the Merlot, everything. It's really interesting.
Did you know which
Um,
grapes they're growing on Ponza? Did you ever know that? What they're growing
I
there?
thought it was Bellone on
So
Ponza,
did
isn't it?
I. It's not. It's Bombino Bianco.
Ah, Bombino Bianco.
Yeah,
Okay, yeah.
because
Again, a
I
grape
did
that
too.
people associate with just kind of blend.
Oh gosh, cancel what I just said. It's Biancolella. It's
Ah,
Biancolella.
Biancolella.
Yeah.
Okay.
which is also, you know, not very well known and is more known for Ischia, but you know,
Yeah.
also Ponza, but that's what they're growing there. I thought it was Bellone too. I really did.
Yeah, it's so funny. I really thought it
And I
was.
know that other wineries are growing Bombino Bianco on Ponza, but Casale del Giglio, it's where they grow their Biancolella. I know it's surprising. Their Bellone, I believe, is really more along the coast in
Yeah, you're right. Nettuno, I think it is.
yeah, right
Yeah.
there by the winery, right?
That's where they have their antinum, isn't it?
Yes, exactly. Yeah. And maybe what's the word for root? The Latin word for root. Ratio, what's the word for root in Italian?
Radici.
Radice, right?
I
Radice?
don't know if it is
Okay.
that.
Anyway, the name of one of their wines, one of their Ballones that's there is the Latin word for root that I can't remember right now, but it starts with an R. Radix. And
Well
it's
done.
Radice. Yeah, thank you. But I haven't been there either. So that's another one for us to
Yeah, that's definitely another one for us. What we want to do for those ones.
Yeah. I'll figure out an itinerary or two that we can look at and see what works. And yeah, it's gonna be good. And I'm gonna follow up with Emanuela and Giovanna too to make sure that they were on for the 31st. Because even if we're not, you and I will be on.
Yeah, and by the way, if for whatever reason they say no or there's an issue, we could always take that day to go to Marco Carpinetti.
Yeah, Marco Carpinetti, Cincinnato, and Casale del
Yeah,
Giglio.
we could do that whole area. I mean, I'm also really happy to do that. And you know.
Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Well, tell Lily good night.
I will. Bye, babe.
Bye-bye.